100 cases of people who wandered into the wilderness but never came back. Accounts of children, people
was a coyote,
vanishing,
dog, or
seemingly
else.
swallowed up by the many endless forests across America, or even later found in ways that defy logic.
An animal.
Was it a person or an animal or?
I can't tell. All I know is that my central light came on and I just happened to glimpse and see this thing running across the yard. A good-sized man.
She described the way that
like a man.
the creature moved without being unnatural.
You've had problems in the neighborhood
It looked
before?
like it was
Yeah, my dog was
uncomfortable
killed here
in
just
its own
recently.
feet.
I don't know what it was, but whatever it was, it was standing out there. I'm out here
It
looking through
looked
the
like
window
a
now.
vehicle.
Mercedes,
She
I don't want to go
believed
outside.
that what she was looking at
Jesus
was
Christ,
pure
you better.
evil.
Sure. See ya.
Hello?
Get somebody out here.
What's going on now, sir?
That son of a bitch is about 6'9" up.
Do you
Many
see
of the
him now,
cases
sir?
about
Yes, I'm looking
100
right
people,
at him.
at least, who claim that they've been abducted
hang
by
on.
aliens.
He's
One
right.
of Dr.
Is
Matt's
he in your
patients,
yard,
Linda,
sir?
Yeah,
who
he's
says
gone.
she
He's
has
big.
been
Faded out.
abducted since childhood.
Reality. I was just
what I remember
being brought up this tunnel of light, right?
being
Out
around my
of
bed.
this tunnel, I
And I
just
ran between them
noticed
and ran
parts
out
of my
of
life
the
that
room
wouldn't
to my
even
mother's
occur to me to
to
remember.
hide
Then I
from
knew that I
And
wasn't
I
being
never
my
told
mom,
anybody
that I
about
was
that, and I just buried it in the back
And so
of my
then I
mind.
came to the end of this
My brother,
tunnel
he never
and noticed there
spoke
was
about
a
it.
man that first
I
searched me
noticed
at first as
a
a place
mist or a fog
And I
kind of
saw
moving.
relatives that had
The
died
action, the
that
motion
year.
caught my
Then
eye. It
the
actually
wizard,
started
without
taking
moving his
shape,
mouth,
taking
spoke to me
form.
and said,
The
"Struggle,
idea
you're
of the
too
Grim
young to
Reaper
die."
went through my head, cloaked figure. And as I was watching, it kept becoming more and more and more distinct to me that this was actually something with some type of presence. Like it knew I was there. And as I was watching it, it turned and looked directly at me. I felt like whatever this was angry at me. I wasn't welcome. It wanted me out. I had been face to face with a ghost or a demon, a spirit. I'm not really sure what. But this feeling of terror actually was going through me. And I really
Hey everyone, and
felt
welcome
that it
to
was
Real
demonic.
Supernatural
It was something
Encounters.
very
For my
evil.
guest today, I have Bradley. He didn't want to come on video, which is perfectly fine. He has a couple of stories he's going to tell today. So before we get started, Bradley, could you give a brief bio about yourself?
Of course. Well, I'm currently 21 years of age. Ever since I was about 18 or 19, I always started believing 100% in this kind of stuff. My very first encounter with one of these things was back in 2007, but that's a story for another time. So yeah, I am married. I currently live in a part of Alabama I do not wish to disclose, but living out here with my wife, that kind of thing, it's good stuff.
All right. Well, Bradley, if you're ready, you can go ahead and start with your first encounter.
All right. But before I jump into this story, I would like the viewers to know a few things. First and foremost, I'm not claiming ownership to this story. This happened to one of my best friends who wishes to remain anonymous and his two cousins. He just decided to share the story with me so that I could put it on Reddit and that kind of thing, because he is kind of scared to talk about it. Second, if any of the viewers out there do get scared quite easily, I recommend you proceed with caution, because this story can get a little scary at points. And finally, I will not be telling this in a third-person perspective. I will be talking like I am my friend. So to help you better understand the context of what's going on, the direction it's going, and all that good stuff. So, these are my friend's words. A few weeks ago, my uncle and my two cousins came out to visit my mom and dad for a barbecue. We have one every year on the 1st of May because it happens to be my mom and dad's anniversary. So it's the 1st of May. My uncle and my two cousins get out to the house. We had just moved into the house back in February. So we were all excited to have our first real get together out there. And it was really nice. We were situated on a mountaintop with a decently sized yard that was completely surrounded by woods. My dad had plans to clear out a few sections of the woods so he could put up deer feeders so he could have the chance of getting in some hunting while we lived out there. And while he hadn't started preparing to cut down the trees, he decided to, quote, test the water, as he phrased it. And we put up 8 or 9 different trail cameras. I helped him, that kind of thing, setting up the trail cameras, finding out good spots, and figure out what position they should be facing. And that was pretty much the end of that. We set up all trail cameras and we left them alone. So we get to the point where me and my cousins, we decided to relieve some of our boredom. And in the backyard, we had a trampoline set up. And the original owners of the house had decided to include their pool in the deal, along with the volleyball court they made on the far side bordering the woods. Now, behind the woods was a decently sized power line that was actually the line of a different county that was bordering our property. So me and my 2 cousins are enjoying ourselves on the trampoline without a single care in the world. And after a short while, my dad and my uncle came to us and announced that dinner was ready. So we all went inside, grabbed a plate, grabbed whatever we wanted, and then back outside onto our back deck and sat down and ate. Me and my dad were the first ones to finish eating. My dad looked at me and suggested that we should go check out the trail cameras just to, get an idea. We had done this many times before, sometimes even checking 3 or 4 times a week. And just testing the waters, as my dad said. We got to the point to where we only hadn't checked one of them. But for some reason, it was a bit harder to find, even though we knew exactly where it was. After searching around for almost 10 minutes, we eventually found the exact tree it should have been on. I remember placing it on that tree, that specific tree. And it was one of those trees that in my mind, once I saw it again after the first time, it was near impossible not to recognize it. So my dad came up to me and started looking around, questioning that I had put the trail camera on that specific tree. I told him several times that I was 100% positive that was the tree it was supposed to be on. So we started circling the tree, looking for any signs of our missing trail camera. While we were shuffling around trying to find it, I kicked something hard. I tripped over myself and I looked down at my feet to see what had tripped me. And there it was. Well, what was left of it? The trail camera. My dad came over to me and he saw it just as clearly as I did. The trail camera had been completely and utterly destroyed. On further examination of the trail camera, we learned that the heavy-duty ratchet straps we had used to secure it around this decently sized tree have been torn apart, literally. It looked as though something had grabbed the trail camera and just completely ripped it off of the tree and just went to town on destroying it. My dad, thinking that whatever did this must have stepped into the range of which the trail camera could have taken a picture of it, he decided that he was going to try to open the camera. He did not succeed in doing this. This trail camera, which was almost damn near indestructible, was damaged so badly to the point where my dad couldn't even get it open. My dad, not wanting to admit defeat in front of me, grabbed his knife and exclaimed that he was getting that thing open to at least try to get the memory card. That was all he seemed to care about at the moment. So after a few moments of forcing his knife into the trail camera, he finally managed to get it open. It took him a second to fully realize where the spot for the memory chip was supposed to be in the tangled mess of the trail camera. And he finally found the spot for the trail camera. He pulled it out, and to his utter disbelief, the memory card, had broken into several pieces while inside the trail camera. My dad was beyond upset at that point because not only did he lose about a $150 trail camera, he also lost his only chance at figuring out what did this. Now even more upset than before, he said, "Let's go back to the house." He picked up the trail camera and we both started heading back to the house. He told the others what happened to the trail camera and then pulled it out to show them. There were a few exchanged words, and we decided to just let it go for a minute, calm down, try to enjoy ourselves. Fast forward a little bit to a few minutes before nightfall. My dad, my uncle, me, and my two cousins all went out into the woods, just practically clinging to hope that one of the other trail cameras had spotted the thing that destroyed the other one, since me and my dad had checked them. My uncle went with my dad, so me and my two cousins were together. So we began checking every single trail camera we had left. So my cousins and I are heading towards the direction of our third trail camera just to retrieve the memory card, because my dad had told us to just grab the memory card and he will search all of them together. We get about 15 yards away from our third trail camera, and in an instant, a chill ran from the top of my head all the way down to both of my feet. I told my cousin this, and they said, "We know. We feel it too." We all started panning, looking to see if we could see anything at all. Then I picked up on something. In the direction we were heading toward to get to the camera, I saw a figure. Me thinking it was either my dad or my uncle, I called out to it by saying hello. Then it looked right at me and my cousins. I knew immediately it was neither my dad or my uncle because it had glowing red eyes. At first glance, I thought maybe it was a deer, thinking that it was just reflecting the lights of our flashlights back onto us. But that theory quickly went through the window when we turned our flashlights away from it, and then it stood up. I watched in utter horror and disbelief as it stood up very slowly from about the level a deer would be to being about 9 feet off of the ground. As me and my cousins were standing there in complete shock, it let out a deep guttural growl and started advancing towards us. All three of us had managed to sort of slip into a trance. I was the first one to snap out of it and grabbed both of my cousins and tried to get them to move so that we could run. One of my cousins managed to get out of the trance as well. We both tried to get the other out of it immediately afterwards. My other cousin finally showed a sign that he was out of the trance that he had been under, and just before I could utter the words to run as fast as we can, this thing leaped into the air and landed on top of the cousin who snapped out of it last. Myself, my other cousin, fell to the ground as the creature landed, and then it let out a loud growl before getting off my cousin and grabbing him by his throat. It lifted him up off the ground and roared directly into his face before looking at my other cousin, the one who was just getting back to his feet. Creature threw my first cousin away from it and then hit the other cousin across the face, causing him to go right back down to the ground. Then the creature looked directly at me, took one gigantic step forward, and lifted me off the ground as well. Then did the same roar it did to my cousin, only this time it was much louder. I yelled for my cousins to run if they could, with as much air as I could possibly let out. One cousin was helping his brother get back to his feet after being thrown, and then they looked at each other. then to the creature, and decided there was only one thing to do, and that was to try to help me. In complete desperation, they picked up anything they found on the ground, a branch, a rock. They ended up both picking up branches that are about the size of their forearms and began to charge at the creature. One of my cousins connected a swing to its head, while the other went directly for the arm the creature had me in. The force of the blow to the creature's head caused it to waver and falter a little bit, while the multiple hits to its arm and wrist caused it to drop me. Cousins tried to get a few more swings in, but the creature managed to right itself and caught both incoming blows going directly for its head. Grabbed both my cousins, one in each hand, and threw them away, causing my cousins to drop the branches they were using as weapons to fall back to the ground. All three of us got together and tried to run, but the creature swung one of its arms and connected to all three of our chests, causing us all to fall down once again. The creature reared back its head and let out the most terrifying roar I've ever seen or heard, and then started to move towards us. Just then, a gunshot rang out. Then another. Then another. All three shots connected to the creature. I looked up just in time to see the creature fall to the ground, appearing to be lifeless. I look over my shoulder and see my dad and my uncle, both standing there as white as sheets, both holding their guns. They both hurried over to me and my cousins and told us to run back to the house immediately, fearing the creature may not be dead. Both of my cousins booked it back to the house, whereas I did not. I was angry. I wanted revenge. I wanted it dead for good. I jerked the gun out of my uncle's hands and proceeded to empty the rest of the clip into this creature's chest. Once I was sure it was dead, I hit it across the face with the shoulder stock and spat in its face. And I screamed at it, "How do you like that?" I handed my uncle back the gun, which he immediately loaded another mag into. Walked past my dad and started heading back towards the house, with my uncle and dad following close behind me. We get to the edge of the woods and start making our way across a small field to get to the house. As at that moment, out of nowhere, we heard several more growls and roars, sounding almost exactly like the creature we had just killed. Hearing this, and immediately my dad screamed at us to run. So we did. All three of us started to book it back to the house as fast as we could. We hopped the about 4-foot tall chain link fence that made up the dimensions of our front yard, and then ran up the stairs onto the front porch. My dad, my uncle both turned around and started firing their guns. Not at anything, almost like they were trying to scare the creatures off. That was until one of them showed itself. Both my uncle and my dad shot at the same time, and then it fell to the ground lifeless. And then everything went silent. No more growls or roars were heard. Nothing at all. Everything just went completely silent. All three of us had made it back inside the house. And then that entire night, anyone who knew how to operate a firearm safely had one. And their hands were on their person. It stayed that way until the next morning. Then the next morning came around. Against everything that was screaming in the back of our minds, me, my cousins, my uncle, and my dad went back out into the woods. We were trying to see if we can find the bodies of the two creatures they had killed. To our disappointment, we found nothing. Except, of course, a pile of blood of the creature I myself had dumped 4 rounds into. That was all we found. Just that one pool of blood. That's the end of that story.
All right. If you're ready, you can go ahead and start with your next personal story.
Okay. So for those of you who are still watching, this is one of my personal stories. This involves one of my other friends. He was open to him being named. His name is Jacob. He is not the same friend who just had that encounter. So here we go. This story takes place in the backcountry of the area I grew up in. Be warned, some of this may be frightening for some. So back in 2019, I remember there being this big uproar of unknown creatures roaming the forest, like Bigfoot and skinwalkers. This story isn't about them. This story is about probably one of the scariest things I think I've ever heard of. This creature is called the Wendigo. A few months after one of my friends, Jacob, mentioned this big uproar, I went to go see him since I had been enlisted in the United States Marines. I got back after being discharged, and one of the first things I did was to go and see him. We're having a good old time, and he brought up the idea of going out to a little hangout spot his now ex-girlfriend took him when they wanted to get away for a few hours. So I decided, why not? I had nothing better to do. So I grabbed my gun and I went out to it. And we went out to this almost extremely secluded area and started messing around on the old dock that was there. Dock had been pretty much forgotten by the looks of it, poorly maintained, and some boards were almost completely rotted through. So about 30 minutes into our shenanigans, Jacob brought up the topic of the creature called the Wendigo. The name struck a nerve with me, and it scared me a little bit. Curious, I asked him about it because I had never heard about anything. I hadn't heard about anything like that. He said that according to what he's read, that if you went into the woods and said Wendigo 3 times, you would come across the scariest thing you've ever seen. Me calling his bluff, I told him to prove it. And to this day, I wish I hadn't. We start walking on this little path that led deep into the thick woods close to the Alabama state line. We walked for maybe about 20-ish minutes. We were taking our time because the forest was eerily quiet around us, so we were in no rush to go very deep. We got to a good enough spot. Me and Jacob started looking around. And we noticed that it had been it had been raining a lot over the past couple days. So we did notice that the ground was almost completely saturated with water. Turned to Jacob, and he dares me to do it. I stood there in complete silence. The rest of the forest was almost as silent as well, besides the tall pines swaying in the wind high above our heads. Reluctantly, I slowly started to say it. Wendigo, Wendigo, Wendigo. And then, nothing happened. I let out a silent sigh of relief at the fact that nothing had happened. One thing about mine and Jacob's friendship is we loved when one of us proved the other wrong about anything. In our friendship of almost 10 years, I think it was the first time I had proven him wrong at anything. We started to talk a little bit of smack back and forth. And then we heard a noise in the distance. Me still having the reflexes I had from the Marines, I immediately snapped towards the location of and the direction of the noise that were just then turning into noises. I started to move closer to the noises, trying to figure out what they were. And then shortly after, we saw a few coyotes running across the path, about 30 feet in front of us. I almost let out another sigh of relief, but decided against it because that relief wouldn't have lasted long since I had the feeling that something was wrong. I didn't know it at first. All I knew was that it was time for me and Jacob to leave. As we turned to leave the woods, all of a sudden, a tall pine tree started to groan and creak as it started to come down. Noticing this, and in a moment of pure instinct, I shoved Jacob forward as the tree came falling through the rest of the branches and landed right in between us, right where Jacob was standing. Jacob let out a terrifying cry of fear and desperation as the tree landed, and I hopped the tree to get to him. I could feel his heart pounding like a drum as I grabbed him by his shirt and yanked him to his feet. He was still terrified and practically crying as I screamed at the top of my lungs, "Move! Move now! We have to go!" I spun him around really hard, causing him to fall to his knees. I got him up quickly, and then we both started to sprint down the path in the direction we came. I didn't dare look back, and neither did Jacob, because off in the distance I could hear the thudding footsteps of something chasing after us. I was sprinting through the woods when a familiar sound came from behind me. "Jacob, Jacob, come quick!" It was the sound of Jacob's younger sister, Olivia. He turned and tried to get past me. The whole time he was screaming his sister's name. I stopped him and said, "Jacob, look at me. It's not her. She's at home, remember? It's not her." Just then, another pine tree started to buckle. I saw it just in time to tackle Jacob to the ground as both of us were nearly crushed. I screamed at Jacob once more to get out of there. Go now. As I was screaming that, I pulled the gun out of my waistband and aimed it down the path in the direction from whence we came. Jacob made it to the opening about 30 seconds later. And turned back and noticed that I was still aiming my gun down the trail, and he screamed at me to get out of there. I turned and started sprinting towards him. As I made it into the clearing, maybe a good 50 feet, I turned around and me and Jacob both saw it. The thing we had ushered into showing itself, the Wendigo. It stood about 9 feet tall on its hind legs. There was practically no meat on its bones. It had really skinny legs and even skinnier arms. Its skin a pale white, almost like a vampire's. But the thing I noticed the most about it were the eyes, almost a vibrant blue, very similar to lightsaber blue, for those of you who have seen the movie Star Wars. Having had enough fear, I raised my gun and fired at it. Me nor Jacob decided to stick around to see if I had hit it or even killed it, and ran towards the car. And then we got in the car and we got out of there as fast as that car would take us. That was my first experience with the so-called Wendigo. And I pray almost every single night I never have to encounter something like that that terrifying ever again. That's it.
All right. Well, Bradley, I have some questions for you.
Okay.
Let's see. You mentioned that you had some type of an encounter in 2007. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. So I had a Bigfoot encounter back in 2007. I was really young, and that kind of encounter is what really kind of sparked my interest in this kinds of stuff. Because me personally, back in 2007, I had no idea things like that even existed.
Yeah.
But I saw it one night, a few days after my birthday in 2007, and it just haunted me until the summer between my sophomore and junior year. I had made a friend who believed in that kind of stuff, and he decided it would be a good idea to have me and him go up there, stay a night, see if we can find anything. And then after that night, I just had closure. I wasn't afraid of that thing anymore.
Okay. And then so you physically saw it too?
Yes. I saw the Bigfoot with my own two eyes. Although part of me, even today, still wishes it was a dream, because I can't watch any sort of movies that involve the woods without thinking, a Bigfoot's going to come out and attack them.
Can you give a description of what this one looked like?
Sure. So I feel it's necessary for me to give the description of what I saw to explain how I saw it. So one night, I won't go too far into the story. One night, my grandfather, he walked into my room. I was playing video games. I had a Sega Dreamcast hooked up to my TV. And I was just in there playing video games, and he asked me to take out the trash so we could take it the next day. And so I did. And then I got out there to the garage, and then I turned on as soon as I started opening the garage door, the motion censored light that was above our garage flicked on. And then I was still kind of afraid of being outside at night by myself. And so I was doing this kind of like hurried walk. And then when I got to the driver door at my dad's truck, I just kind of tossed the bag towards the bed and hoped to make it. But long story short, I didn't make it. It hit the tailgate and it dropped behind the truck. So I thought to myself, there's something out here. And then I just decided to work up the courage to just go back behind the truck, pick up the bag, set it in the bed, and then move back into the garage. I set the bag down inside the bed, and then immediately a feeling of just I was being watched fell over me. I turned around, and the way my driveway was set up, you came down a downward sloping hill curving to the left on the gravel road, and then you turned right into my driveway. And when you pulled into the driveway, it was first level, and then it curved to the left, and then it went up a steep incline. About 10 yards after being on a steep incline, it mellows out, but doesn't level off completely, and it just keeps going up an incline all the way up to the garage. Well, right at the point to where it mellows out, I saw a figure standing there. It took my eyes a second to adjust because I had been facing the light of the garage. But once it did, I realized that what I was seeing was standing on 2 feet, and I could see it from about the knees up. And this thing was easily taller than me on its knees. I was about, if I had to guess, it was probably about 8 feet on its knees, 8 feet tall on its knees.
All right. Going towards your friend's encounter, did your friend take any pictures or any evidence of the smashed trail cams?
If he did, he didn't provide.
Okay. All right. When your friend first told you the story, what was your thoughts on it, or what was going through your mind?
Obviously terror, because you don't hear something like that happening every day out there where he lives. But it scared me more than it scared him while he was telling it, because I'm just gonna throw this little bit of information out there. I used to live on that same mountain. It was the same mountain that I had also seen the Bigfoot on. So to have two things out there that I practically knew nothing about,
Mhm.
it scared me. And this was long after I had gotten closure on the whole Bigfoot encounter, but to find out there's almost a werewolf type being out there as well. I'm happy. I'm happy all everyone on that mountain knows how to use a gun
Mhm.
for their safety. Because that, according to my friend, that was the most aggressive thing he's ever seen. And he's been around aggressive animals. He's been around all sorts of aggressive things: snakes, deer, hell, even a horse charged at him once. But to have something that is not afraid to grab you by the throat and lift you off of the ground, that just takes aggressive to a whole nother level for him.
Mhm.
So I'm scared to return back up to that mountain. And I have moved away. I have moved, that mountain's in Georgia. I live in Alabama now.
Okay.
So if I do ever go back to Georgia, I probably will not go anywhere near that mountain.
Okay. All right. When did this Dogman encounter happen for your friend? What year?
This year.
Oh, 2021.
Yes.
Okay. Um, what month?
The day of the encounter was May 1st.
May 1st. Okay, so very recently.
Yes.
Oh wow.
He moved into that house back in February of this year, and then had the encounter May 1st and the morning of May 2nd.
Okay.
That was the time span of the story.
All right. I'm trying to get it all in my head. So when they were out there, why were they going out there again? What was their whole point of going out into the woods there? What were they doing?
My best assumption for that would be to basically do what I did when I wanted to go back out there after the Bigfoot,
Mhm.
to get closure, to get some kind of photographic evidence or video evidence that, something like that is out there and it exists.
Okay, yeah, because of the whole trail cam being smashed, and they're trying to figure out what even,
Yeah.
did that. Okay. Did they go out that same day or night when it was smashed, or did they wait a day? When did they go back out?
Well, according to my friend, he said that when they checked the trail cameras and found the one all busted up, because I did ask that question, what was the time frame between the last time you checked the trail cameras and the time you found it completely and utterly destroyed?
Mhm.
And he told me he had checked it 2 days prior of
Okay.
the day that it was destroyed.
All right. So when this dogman appeared, it jumps on this cousin. Um, how old were these cousins?
Um,
Do you
hell,
know?
they I know his cousins. I do, because I'm really close friends with his family. Damn, his two cousins must be getting close to 18 or 19 at this point.
Okay. Okay. So when the dogman landed on one of them, how many of them did he land on?
Just
Just
the one.
just the one?
My friend told me just the one.
Do you know how he landed on the cousin? How the dogman landed on the cousin?
My friend described it as it landed. Okay, so picture. I'm gonna try to break this down as best I can.
Mhm.
picture a werewolf,
Yeah.
okay, but make it to where, like, when he jumped, let's say it's a werewolf, but it has human features.
Mhm.
It has the arms. So apparently, when this dog man jumped, it grabbed the cousin by the shoulders, and then the weight of it falling pushed him backwards, and
Okay.
the dog man landed on top of him.
Okay. Like feet on stomach, feet on ground around him.
Feet on ground, dog man was holding him down by his shoulders. That's what I assume. That's the conclusion I drawn up
Okay.
from what the information my friend had given me.
Okay. And then what happened after that again? So because I got a question lined up for them. So when that happened, that cousin told them to run, but instead they went to go fight it with big thick branches.
No, that was when the dog man picked up my friend.
Okay. Oh yeah, by the
Yeah.
throat, or by the how did it
So the dog man jumped onto the first cousin,
Mhm.
and then it knocked my friend and his other cousin to the ground. And as they were getting back up, the dog man went over to the other cousin, the one who hadn't been jumped on, and then picked him up off the ground.
Okay.
Or hold on, I got my things mixed up. Hold on.
Yeah, we should name them like cousin one, cousin two.
Yeah. Um.
All right.
So, all right, I have an idea. All right, so the cousin who was pounced on, let's call him, I don't know, Jake. Let's
Mhm.
call him Jake. And then Jake's brother, my friend's other cousin, let's call him, I don't know, Bob. Let's call him Bob. Let's call my friend Dave.
Okay.
So Jake was the first one to be pounced on. This is who the dog man jumped on first.
Okay.
Jake was the last one we managed that my friend had managed to pull out of the trance. So when the dog man landed on Jake, it growled in Jake's face before getting off of him and grabbing him by his throat. It lifted him up off the ground and basically screamed right in his face. It roared in his face before looking to Bob. Bob was just getting back to his feet, and the creature threw Jake away, because I don't know what the thought process of the creature was, but he threw Jake away and then directed his attention towards Bob. So
Okay. So
hold on. And then the creature, after throwing Jake, looked to Bob and practically just smacked him across the head, like with a backhand or something. I'm not sure. My friend didn't tell me what kind of strike it was. But
yeah.
then the dog man, after striking Bob, looked towards Dave. And then it took one gigantic step towards Dave and lifted him off the ground as well. It roared in Dave's face as Jake and Bob were regrouping. They're getting their senses back together. And it was at that moment they picked up a branch or something and decided to attack, trying to free Dave.
Okay. Do you feel like Like it was actually trying to kill anybody?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
How big?
I heard about the Dogman about 4 months. Well, no, maybe 5. We'll go 5. 5 months ago. It was a story in which this man had taken his girlfriend out camping, and a dog man violently murdered his girlfriend right in front of him, and then drug her off. And then on the 1-year anniversary of that death, of that murder, the same man decided to take one of his close female friends, and then the dog man attacked and killed her.
Hmm.
That's how the story went. I remember watching it on YouTube.
It's very interesting. Well, I asked this because usually, well, how big was this dog man? And what do you know what the description is of it?
The only description my friend gave to me was that it was about 9 or 10 feet tall.
Okay.
That's how he described it. One of the he did explain while he was telling the part of the story where they went out the next morning. It was to get a better description of that thing, because it was almost pitch black nightfall, and apparently when my friend and his 2 cousins were shining their flashlights on this thing, it was dark enough to where they couldn't make out any defined lines, because they had their flashlight phones, not actual flashlights.
Okay. What was their current or past medical conditions after this?
His 2 cousins, I'm trying to remember. I think my friend did tell me this. My friend did tell me that he, I had a feeling he was lying, but he told me that it hadn't really affected him much. But
Okay.
I knew that he was lying, because I could see in his eyes that, something was off. As for his 2 cousins, he didn't mention anything about it. But if I had to guess, they probably have some sort of trauma, maybe PTSD now, because that's something that terrifying happens. It's going to leave a mark. It doesn't matter who you are.
Okay. What about physically?
What do you mean?
During this whole battle, is there any physical damage?
Besides them killing 2?
Yeah, besides them, yeah, for where the dogman was taking on the cousins and your friend, was there any physical damage done to them?
Logical explanation would say that the first cousin to be thrown had a concussion, but the way my friend described the whole encounter, it didn't seem like much had happened to him. Which I will admit, I found that a little bit hard to believe when he was telling me this. But I've known this friend for 6 or 7 years.
Yeah.
And I have a strong feeling he wouldn't lie to me about something. But yeah.
Well, the reason I'm asking is because where it sounds like this dogman wasn't actually trying. Usually, when a dogman wants to kill something, it's going to kill it. It's especially if it's almost 10 foot tall, times the width. It would just straight up, slash it, pounce on it, kill it. And usually, when a dogman from a lot of the encounters I've listened to and read, goes after any type of prey, they pounce on something, like say a sheep or a dog or a horse, and it breaks their back. So when you mentioned that this one pounced or jumped onto your friend's cousin at being 10 foot tall, makes me wonder, like, you know, that's why I was asking you questions about how it landed on him, because that would have probably ended up really like knocking him out, getting it, hitting the stomach or breaking ribs or smashing them or something. And
So
now,
do you, I have a question for you, and this is me being 100% curious because this didn't happen to me.
okay,
Do you think that there was a slight possibility that the dogman was not intent on killing them? Maybe it was just trying to
yeah,
either defend its territory or get them out of it, or just defend
yeah,
itself because it felt like it was threatened. So it showed
yeah,
a little bit of restraint.
yeah. That's actually what I was thinking when you first told the story. Because if it's going to kill something, it's going to do it. But where it seems like it was holding a lot of back, from killing or hurting, and it was kind of just roaring. It's roaring. It's just kind of saying, leave me the hell alone, get out of my area.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
And so that's what I seem to think too. I don't think it was intending on killing them. I think it was more of trying to get them out of that area, especially when roaring in their faces, throwing them, not even like trying to hurt them, and then obviously uh, smacking the other two cousins. It had to restrain a lot of force. I think I've even listened to a Bigfoot encounter where a guy got smacked upside the head and it knocked him out. But the thing was, the Bigfoot was holding back a lot of its strength. So, that's a small hit, and it's a size smaller than what the Dogman is. So I know that it could have been holding back. I'm just trying to, piece together like what was the purpose. But I think that's the real reason. It might have been holding back, and it
Yeah,
just wanted the boys out of that area. That's why I destroyed the trail cam,
yeah.
right?
And then maybe after they had killed it, after my friend had dumped another 4 rounds into it, that
Mm,
was when the rest of them just went full, I'm going to you up, and just decided to all out attack with the intent of killing.
yeah, yeah. That's what I think too. But then, so one other one appeared and it showed itself, right?
Yes.
So when that one showed itself, it didn't try to attack. It just showed itself first, right?
Um, my best guess from the way my friend was telling the story was that it showed itself by charging.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So apparently, no, I'm not exactly sure on the details of what happened, but his dad and his uncle were up on the front porch. They were ready to shoot. They were ready to shoot at anything, and then I guess one of them decided to make a charge at him with the intent of killing, and they
Yeah,
saw it and both shot it.
man. I wonder what would happen if they would have just left those dogmen alone. Like, do you think they would have, your cousins or your friends' cousins would have been able to just kind of walk out of that area if they would have just left it alone?
Um, hold on a second. Could you rephrase that?
Yeah. Do you think that if your friends' cousins would have just left them alone, do you think that that dogman would have just let them go?
What, like when they first saw it?
Yeah. Obviously,
Um,
the dogman jumped on one of them and then kind of was. I mean, it could have roared first. Did it roar before it pounced?
um, it did growl.
Okay.
Yeah, he let out that low guttural growl before pouncing.
Okay. All right.
But in the context of the way my friend told it, I don't think that that growl had any intention of warning.
Okay. When that second dogman came around after killing the first one, did the second one die?
It appeared to have died
Okay.
because it
Two-
was night. It was nightfall, and they were only able to confirm that the first one had died because my friend made complete sure that it was dead
Yeah.
because it was shot 3 times, and then my friend just grabbed the gun and then pumped another 4 rounds into it.
Okay.
So
Where at did he pump the rounds at?
mostly the chest,
Okay.
and then
Alright.
he struck it across the face with the shoulder stock and then spat in the face.
So when the cousins and the friend were getting kind of like attacked by the dogman, the dad and the uncle came behind them and they shot the dogman. Where did they shoot him at?
My friend described as one of the rounds going into its trying to think left thigh, and then the other 2 were just in different areas of the chest.
Okay. All right. Okay, so now the second one, the second dogman got hit. So after the second dogman got hit, what happened after that? Did everybody ran to the house, or what happened for them to decide to come back and check? Or did you say that they came back the next night,
No, they came back the following morning,
following morning? Okay.
because after they had shot the second dogman, everything went silent. It was like the dogman almost didn't want to attack anymore.
Okay. How
Why?
many
I wouldn't know.
how many more howls were there?
How many what?
More howls were there like out of all? So you've seen the second dog, or they seen the second dog man. How many more howls did you hear before the second one came out? Like, how many do you think was out there?
Give me a second. I'm actually gonna text my friend and ask that.
Okay.
Oh, he's active. Okay, that's good. He's always quick at responding. And send. Do you have any other questions for me while we wait for his response?
Sure. So, that's actually one of my questions we kind of already answered, but I was going to say, where the dogman kind of just threw and roared at your friends, cousins, do you think it was just like a warning over territory?
I do believe that was the scenario, yes. Because
Man,
like you said yourself, if it wanted to kill one of them, it would have.
yeah. Okay.
Oh, there he is. He said it sounded to be about 5 or 6.
Oh, really? And so, has he been threatened, or has he seen any more since then? Since it was around May 2nd that this happened, and it's May 23rd. Has he had any other
Yes.
problems, or?
So that brings about the conclusion of that encounter.
Okay.
Okay. I put in a few of my own words after, telling my friend's words for the longest time.
Mhm.
And I said, for those who are curious, my friend still does in fact live at that house.
Okay.
Although he is still scared at that anything like that could happen ever again, he has had no experiences even close to that night. In fact, he hasn't even seen or heard these creatures since that night.
Okay.
And then I find that a little bit weird, because not only did you have almost a life-threatening, I'm not even going to call it an almost life-threatening event. It was a life-threatening event happen, and then you stay. Like,
Yeah, because I kind of believe that there was more than two, because where did the bodies go? Obviously, unless you have
yes,
some type of agency come and pick them up. But yeah, I think there would have been at least anywhere from 5 to 7 in a group.
yes,
Sometimes there, you hear about those rare stories where there's only a couple of them or just one by themselves. So I could see it just being a male or female, but you said that they did hear other roars or other growls and or howls. But so you would think that they would come back because they're pretty revengeful.
yes.
But you answered most of my questions, Bradley, so I appreciate that. And thank you for coming on and telling your friends the stories. Would you like to give any brief comments or advice for anybody that could be experiencing the same things?
Try not to let what you've seen affect you. Don't get me wrong. Some experiences you can't stop from happening. Some experiences will absolutely ruin the rest of your life. But the best thing I suggest, that I recommend you can do, is to sort of accept it. But don't accept it to the point to where it totally dictates the rest of your life. Like, yeah, it happened. It happened to me. Now, some ways to sort of get off your chest of what you've seen is to do what I did. Write about it. Put it on the internet. Let people know what you've seen. Not necessarily for, the attention, which I know some people do. They'll come up with some BS made up story about these things, trying to get attention. And then they're just at it for the fame. They just want fame. That's all people seem to care about these days. But if you have an actual legitimate story or encounter, one of the best things you can do is to talk about it. Because me personally, if something's bothering me, I talk about it. It always helps for me. And second, just realize it bleeds, okay? If something terrifies you that much, raise your gun and shoot it. It don't matter. I mean, it's not like these things are endangered species. We don't know how many is out there. Okay, so you killing a few to possibly save your own life, do it. Would I have shot the Bigfoot I've seen? Hell yes. There are about 4 of them. I would have shot every last one of them if I could. Do what my friend did. Shoot it. If you have a gun, shoot it. And if you live in a mountainous area where you're afraid of what could be out there in the woods that could do you harm, I'm going to take one quote from a movie. All right. I'd rather have one and not need it than need it and not have one. Okay. Actually, let me say that quote again, because you guys are missing. I feel like y'all are missing the point. So, why do you carry a gun? Simple. I'd rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it. So if you live in an area that you are afraid something is in the woods, keep a gun on you. All right? Would a rifle be better? Most likely. You can find a shotgun that'll probably do just fine, especially with 1 ounce slugs, because those suckers move. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about that.
All right. Well, Bradley, I appreciate you for coming on and telling those stories. And thank you, audience, for watching. It's been another episode of Real Supernatural Encounters. And we're going to see you guys later. Thank you for watching. See you, Bradley.
Thank you for the opportunity, my friend.
Anytime. Bye.
If you want me to make a second appearance telling my Bigfoot story,
Mhm.
shoot me a message.
You got it.
All right.
We'll see you guys later.
All right.
Bye.
Goodbye.